is you want to plan ahead. You want to be very strategic when it comes to being a CISO. So the fact that it's sort of mid-November, there's about 6 weeks left in the year, I really want to start thinking about 2026 from a strategic standpoint. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, my friends. You know what time it is. It is time. It is time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. Hope you are doing awesome and amazing. So excited to get back into the mic. I know we've done some interviews and other factors, but I always love talking to you, chatting with you, and giving you words of nugget. So what I really want to do is really start planning. One of the things we always talk about is you want to plan ahead. You want to be very strategic when it comes to being a CISO. So the fact that it's sort of mid-November, there's about 6 weeks left in the year, I really want to start thinking about 2026 from a strategic standpoint. We're not talking about New Year's resolutions or other things like that. We're talking about what are the things that a world-class CISO needs to be thinking about and focusing on when it comes to 2026. And I've been doing a lot of interviews, doing a lot of different white papers and blogs and postings on this topic. But I thought I wanted to do on this is just sort of summarize and give you a lot of just nuggets, a lot of quick 2 to 3 minute sound bites, just to hopefully plant some seeds, get you thinking, get you focused, and get you ready for the next 12 to 18 months, because things are changing rapidly and world-class CISOs are always thinking ahead. First thing, I was asked this: what is the number one priority that a CISO needs to focus in 2026? Like if there was one top thing that was most critical to your success, most critical to you being world class in 2026, and your answer might surprise me. It actually surprised the host. It was one of those where they just sort of paused and I caught them off guard with my answer. And they just sort of sat there for like 10 seconds being like, did he really just say that? And then they thought about it. And I asked them, can you disagree with me? Can you find something that's a higher priority? Can you find something that would be more important to the success of a CISO in 2026? And they couldn't give me an answer. They had to agree with what I said. And my answer was this: exercise, eating healthy, and drinking a gallon of water a day. Because the reality is our health is the most important. 2025 was sort of an interesting year and sort of a rough year because I actually lost a few friends in cybersecurity. These folks were just in their late 40s and early 50s, and they were wildly successful. They built companies. They were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They were CISOs for some of the biggest Fortune 10 companies you could ever know and ever imagine. And they didn't take care of their health. They didn't go in and get physicals and blood work. They didn't go in and get the routine tests that you need. Like no one likes talking about it, but colonoscopies, right? They didn't go in and eat healthy. They drank like garbage. They didn't hydrate at all. And unfortunately, their health caught up with them, and they unfortunately didn't make it through the year. And here's the reality: how can you help others? How can you serve your mission if your body is not in optimal shape? If you are not operating in peak performance, how are you going to live till 70, 80, and 90 and fulfill your mission? Because guess what? There are people and companies that only you can help. There are companies out there that need you to be their CISO. There are stages that you need to be on. There's books that you need to write. There's messages that only you can get across to the world in terms of making cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and family. But you can't do it if you're not healthy. And it also hit home for me personally. I think many of you know that I think I'm pretty healthy, but I didn't focus in on the right things. And I actually had some illnesses this year. I had some health issues. I lost 40 pounds, not intentional at all because I didn't eat. I didn't hydrate. I had days where I just was so exhausted. And I'm just being honest, I'm admitting this for the first time. I had days where I couldn't get out of bed, where I just had zero drive, zero motivation, and actually got myself a little depressed. And the reason was I didn't take care of my health. I'm exercising, but I didn't eat. There were days I was doing heavy exercising and I was eating less than 1,000 calories. Your body is going to collapse. Your body needs fuel. And there were days where I was drinking less than 20 ounces of water. I would go in and take a bottle of water. I'd take a sip of it. I'd leave it on the counter. And then I'd go later and take another one. So yes, technically in my mind, I was opening up 5 bottles of water, but I was never drinking it. I was just leaving them laying around. And I'll tell you right now, your body can't operate on that. Most healthy individuals without exercising need about 2,000 calories. Then if you're exercising and you have an active lifestyle and you're on stages, you probably need closer to 23 to 2,500 calories. And your body is made up mostly of water. So you need about 100 to 120 ounces of water a day. Where are you at? Where are you at with your diet? I know nobody likes going in and tracking and monitoring, but remember one of our core rules: let data drive decisions and not emotions. You need data. So now I sort of track what I'm eating. I go in and I track my water, and I track my exercise, and I track my sleep, and I track what I'm getting done each day. So I urge you, learn from me. I joke your life can either be a warning sign or a lesson to others. And this year was a little bit of both. This year I was a warning sign to people of this is what happens when you don't take care of your health. And this is what happens when you do take care of your health. So that might be like a crazy answer, but my friend, 6 weeks. Get a trainer if you need it. Get a nutritionist. Go and find a doctor that does full blood work. I'm a big fan. I don't believe in prescription meds. I believe in peptides and vitamins, because peptides and vitamins give your body what it needs to produce and heal. Prescription meds are basically treating symptoms, and you're technically going to be on prescription meds for the rest of your life. Now, go in and talk to medical professionals. Don't take anything I'm saying. I'm not a medical doctor, but I've done a ton of research, a ton of information. I'm just trying to give you ideas here. Go and ask questions from professionals and start asking about peptides, asking about vitamins, asking whether prescription drugs are really the right option for you and what the long-term impact on your body is going to be. But my friends, we're at war, and you and me are the generals and the lieutenants of this war. How are we going to fight the war if we're not in optimal health? How are we going to fight the war if we can't go some days 10 or 12 hours and really produce at the level we need to produce? Now, yes, you need to have fun in your life, but there's also days where we need to lead, and we need to have the energy and the focus and the clarity in our minds in order to do that. So that's going to be number one thing I want you to focus on over the next 6 weeks and get this totally dialed in, so your health is something that's just on cruise control when you head into 2026, not something you have to focus on, think about, or put a lot of attention on it. So next question we look at: what are some of the top areas that a CISO needs to start doing? Remember, when we look at CISO, I want you to not think of it as a chief information security officer. I want you to think of it as a chief officer focused on information security. Now, the information security piece we'll get to in a minute. But right now, I want you to think about and focus on being a chief officer focused on information security. What if in 2026, you are a top-notch, world-class chief officer? You think, act, and behave like a chief officer. The information security is secondary. That's the tool that you utilize for being a world-class chief officer. But what if you become obsessed with being a chief officer? First of all, chief officers sit with other chief officers. They hang out with other chief officers. They meet with the chief officers on a regular basis. So my first question is, where do you currently sit or reside in your company? And if you say, oh, Eric, I'm 100% virtual, that's the wrong answer. Chief officers are not virtual. CEOs go into the office. COOs go into the office. Once again, prove me wrong. Post notes below. I want you to prove me wrong. I want you to find a chief officer that's running a very successful company that's growing the revenue and profits that works 100% remote. Find a world leader, whether you like them or you hate them. President Trump doesn't work from home. President Trump goes into the office every single day when he's not traveling. Members of Congress, they go into the office. Imagine Congress being 100% remote. I mean, you think it's bad now. I mean, think how worse it would be. Chief officers go into offices so they can meet with other chief officers. They don't run companies virtually. So this idea that if you want to work virtually or you're working virtually right now, you are not a chief officer. You need to be around other chief officers. So question, look at a day, look at a week, look at a month. Where are you spending most of your time? Who are you spending most of your time with? Are you meeting with security engineers? Are you meeting with other people in your organization, or are you meeting with other chief officers? Proximity is power. You're around who you think about. So if you don't have an office or a place to sit where the other chief officers are, you need to fix that. Oh, but Eric, those offices are set. There's no way I'm going to go in. Where my executives currently sit, there's 4 corner offices in the executive suite, and they're already taken by the CEO, COO, CFO, and chief legal counsel. They're not going to give me an office there. Okay, let me ask you a question. Are there conference rooms? Are there meeting areas? You're telling me that where the other chief officers sit, there's zero space for a desk. There's zero space for you to sit. I find that highly unlikely. Talk to the executive assistants of the CEO and COO and CFO and say, listen, I would like to sit with the other chief officers as many days as I can, even if it's 3 to 4 hours a day. Can you go in and look at the conference rooms that are in the executive suite and see if there's 2 or 3 hours a day that 1 or 2 of them are available, that I can just sit there and be accessible to the other chief officers? You need to be meeting with the other top 4, CEO, COO, CFO, and chief legal counsel. Those need to be on your radar. Those need to be people that you're meeting with at least once every 2 weeks, ideally weekly. You should be having at least a 15 to 20-minute meeting with the CEO at least 2 to 3 times a month. 4 is ideal. Once a week is ideal, but I'm also being realistic here. That might not be practical. So let's start with reasonable goals. You need to be meeting separately with the COO 2 to 4 times a month, the COO, and chief legal counsel. How are you going to be a chief officer if you're not around the other chief officers, if you're not providing input and data? And when you're meeting with those chief officers, remember one of our other rules that I live by. We talked about the first one. Let data drive decisions, not emotions. The second one, smart people know the right answers. Brilliant people ask the right questions. Remember, whatever beliefs you believe in, someone created us. There's a creator out there that created humans. They gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Maybe our creator, maybe our universe was telling us we need to listen twice as much as we speak. Brilliant people ask the right questions. So when you're meeting with these executives, for 15, 20 minutes. All I want you to do is ask questions. Here's a great question. How can I help you? What is something that I can do as a chief officer to give you better information or better data to help you and help us successfully run the company? Another great question. What are our financial targets for the year? What are our financial targets for this quarter? What is the increase in revenue and profitability that we need to be focused in on? And how can I help you achieve that? What's one thing that I can do to help you hit our target numbers for the quarter and for the year? Next thing, what information or data would be the most helpful to you from a cybersecurity standpoint? Then always come prepared. Always come prepared, because they might ask you, Eric, you tell me, what do I need to know from you about cybersecurity? What is it that you'd like to inform me about? And here's where the magic comes in. Magical CISOs always carry around with them 3 slides. 3 slides only. I don't want you having a 40 slide deck. I don't want you having 50. I don't want you being technical. I don't want you talking about false positives or SIMs or anything like that. I want you to always have 3 slides with you. When I meet with any executive, whether I'm doing vCISO or I'm doing consulting, I always have these printed in my briefcase, or I have a little Batman bag I carry with me, like a satchel that has it in there. And I always have it on my iPad to pull it up. These 3 slides is how you live or die as a CISO. And these 3 slides are this. What are the current threats to our organization? Not for the world, not in general, but for this company, this specific company that you work for, or you're a vCISO for, or you're consulting for. What are the current threats that they need to be aware of? What are the current vulnerabilities that exist in your organization? We're not generic here. This is customization, my friends, at a level you've never customized before. And then the 3rd slide is a chart. It has 4 columns and 6 rows. The first row are the 4 columns. What could happen? What is the likelihood of it occurrence? What is the cost if it occurs? And what is the cost to fix it? Then the next 5 rows are the top risks for your organization. What could happen? All of our data could be inaccessible to the organization. This has a 70% chance of occurring. If it occurs, it will cost us $2 million, and I want $300K to fix it. Now, my job is not to get the $300K. My job is to give you options. And as long as you're making an informed decision as a chief officer, that's all I care. So I'm going to go in and go, listen, you have 2 options. We can either accept the risk and realize there's a 70% chance of losing $2 million, which that's okay. Businesses accept risk all the time. Businesses accept and acknowledge. So I'm okay with that, as long as you're fully aware. Or we can spend $300K and reduce that risk to an acceptable level. Mr. or Mrs. Chief Officer, what would you like to do? What option would you like? And like I said, as long as I fully inform them and made them fully aware, then I'm okay. I'm okay with whatever decision they make. Because remember, my job as a chief officer, focused on information security as my secret weapon, is really as simple as this. What is the value or benefit of the decisions you're making? What is the risk and exposure? And is the value or benefit worth the risk or exposure? That's my job as a chief officer focused on information security, is to get you to ask better questions and make better decisions. So when you're making any decision, most executives, most directors, most people only ask one question. What is the value or benefit? They don't go in and ask the second question, what is the risk or exposure? And then they never, ever ask the last question, which is the value or benefit worth the risk or exposure? This is how the most successful people in the world work and operate. This is how the richest of richest operate. This is how Warren Buffett has become one of the top 5 richest people in the world, because he always goes in and minimizes the downside. He's always going to go in and say, what is the value or benefit? What is the risk or exposure? And is the risk worth the value or benefit? This is why Warren Buffett does not invest in Bitcoin, because the value or benefit is huge, but the risk of exposure is gigantic. You could lose everything. He could lose billions of dollars. So to him, it's not worth it. The risk is not worth the value. So he goes in and does his traditional investing, and it has paid off very, very well for him. So that's an example where we need to get accurate data and accurate information. Another thing chief officers are brilliant at: getting rid of the noise. Don't waste time with silly meetings. If you look at world-class chief officers, they don't have a lot of meetings. And when they do have meetings, they're very short, very concise. They focus on getting accurate information, making decisions as quickly as possible when they have enough information to make a decision, and they minimize noise. Their signal to noise ratio is off the charts. Their signal to noise ratio is so minimal. I'm the same way. Today, I had 5 one-hour meetings scheduled on my calendar. Not one meeting lasted more than 10 minutes. And everyone was like, Eric, these are super short meetings, right? You're getting like 10-minute meetings and you're done. I'm like, yes, for 2 reasons. One, the people weren't prepared. They showed up to the meeting and there was no agenda. I'm like, what questions do you have for me? What information do you need from me? What are the decisions that we should be making to grow? You know what your focus is and what your job is. So what data do you need from me to execute quicker, faster, and better than you did? And if you don't have anything, I'm going to go in and push you into those areas. How can we grow this? How can we expand this? How can we do this? And when you get answers, come back to me. And then maybe we'll have a 30-minute meeting. On the other hand, maybe there's not a lot to cover. Maybe the person was prepared and they have all the information they need, and we didn't need an hour meeting. So I'm huge on saving my time. And then guess what? Today, I was supposed to be in meetings for 5 hours. That's more than 50% of my day. I'm not going to be able to produce if I'm in meetings every day at 5 hours. But guess what? Those 5 meetings were 50 minutes total. So I got 4 hours and 10 meetings back to do these podcasts. I got done a bunch of outstanding items in terms of putting together ebooks and putting together other information and data. So chief officers are optimized and efficient as possible. What is your signal to noise ratio? How efficient are you at running meetings and attending meetings and accomplishing that? Do you have the data for the company? When you're going into 2026, you have a budget. You have amount of money you can spend on a given topic. Is $1 million an appropriate budget for cybersecurity? Well, it depends. If your company is only making $800K and you ask for $1 million, they'll laugh you out of the room. If your company is only making an $80K revenue with maybe a profit of $100K, your security budget might be $5 or $10K. On the other hand, when I worked at Lockheed Martin, multi-billion dollar company, if I went into the EVP and the CEO and I asked for $1 million budget, they would laugh me out of the room. The budget 10 or 15 years ago for cybersecurity was more like 15, 20 million because of the size of the entity. So if I don't have numbers, if I don't have revenue and profitability for the business and for each business unit, how in the world do I know how much money to spend on cyber? I need the data. I need financials. I need numbers. I should be reading business books every night for 20, 30 minutes. I should be reading 2 to 3 business books a month, because in most cases, the chief officer is our weakest skill and the information security is our strongest skill. Next, you should become a master at technology. You should know AI, cloud, zero trust inside and out. Those should be strategies that you are deploying on a yearly, quarterly, monthly, and weekly basis. You should be masters of how those tools can optimize cybersecurity. Because guess what? The attackers are using it against us. Remember what happened about 4 weeks ago. Attackers knew that we put all of our data in the cloud, and they took down Amazon for almost 10 hours, and they took down Microsoft a week later for another 8 hours. And think of how many companies couldn't operate at all, which meant 100% of their critical data was in the cloud. You want to talk about third-party risk? That's about one of the biggest third-party risks I could think about to any organization. Why in the world would 100% of your data be outsourced to a third party where you have no built-in redundancy? You're depending on 100% on a third party to keep your business up and running and functioning. That's insane. That's crazy. Why didn't the CISO step in and say, hey, this is an availability risk. This is a problem. Some of this data should be on premise. Some of this data should be controlled and managed by us so this never happens. Now, people push back and go, but Eric, that's a CIO issue, not a CISO issue. So, security shouldn't be involved. Wait a second. Go back to the basics, my friend. What is the definition of cybersecurity? I ask this all the time, and I've done this on other podcasts. You go up to most people, most executives, most security engineers, and you say, have you heard of cybersecurity? Of course. Is cybersecurity important to your company? Of course. Is cybersecurity important to your job? Of course. Give me a one-sentence definition. Give me a one-sentence articulate definition of cybersecurity. Most executives and most people can't do it. Remember, cybersecurity is simple. Understanding and managing the mitigating risk of our critical data being disclosed, altered, or denied access. Cybersecurity has 3 key components, my friends. It's risk. What is the risk posture for your organization? What cybersecurity risks are you willing to accept and not accept? If you don't have a risk posture for your organization, you're going to lose your job. Because right now, most companies, you know what the risk posture is? Zero risk. Zero risk. They want to be 100% secure. How do I know? Because what happens when a breach occurs? What happens when a company has data exposed or they have a ransomware attack? What is almost the number one thing a company does within 10 days of the breach? They fire the CISO. Why? They thought they were supposed to have zero risk. They thought they were 100% secure. So if you don't want to lose your job, we need to re-educate executives that 100% security doesn't exist and zero risk is not acceptable. So we need to go in and have a risk acceptance level for our company. Then what is your critical data? Where is it located? If all your critical data is located in the cloud, that's a cybersecurity issue. Why? Because remember the last part. Cybersecurity is all about what is disclosure, alteration, or denial of access. Putting that in security terms. What is disclosure, alteration, and denial of access? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Those are the 3 tenets of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is about confidentiality of your critical data, integrity of your critical data, and availability of your critical data. Is it having a cloud provider going down and your availability of your information is not accessible? Isn't that availability? Isn't that 1/3 of cybersecurity? Absolutely. Which means the CIO should be reporting to the CISO, not the CISO reporting to the CIO, or not having a CIO independent. We need to go in and remember world-class CISOs as we enter 2026 are obsessed with risk. They're obsessed with critical data, and they're obsessed with confidentiality, integrity, availability. I keep these to about 30 minutes because I want to give you nuggets. I'll continue this because I still have a lot to talk about with AI, cloud, and other areas. But I hope you got value out of this edition and start putting some of these into practice. Start building out a CISO roadmap for you for 2026. Start prioritizing your health. Start sitting with the other chief officers. Start asking better questions. Start focusing in on risk. And my friends, 2026 will be the year that you transform into a world-class CISO. And once again, if I can help you in any way, shape, or form, if you want to take 2026 to the next level and stop playing around, sign up for my CISO cert. I'm running a lot of specials right now. I'm running some Black Friday specials heading into Thanksgiving. Embrace and own who you are and start investing some money in yourself. Sign up for my programs. Let me work with you and let me make 2026 the year that is your transformational year for becoming that CISO that you've always wanted to be. Once again, thank you for listening to Life of a CISO, and we'll see you next week.